All right, everybody. Welcome to Sports Nothing Else podcast, Grumpy edition and solo edition. Kyle's never free. And on this night, when Major League Baseball canceled the first 6 games of the season, I thought we should at least have a quick podcast. So if you're looking for a mountain of positivity, you've come to the wrong place. If you're looking for talk about the NBA, you get a little bit of that. If you're looking for college basketball, I still haven't watched a minute yet. But we'll do a full breakdown of March Madness anyways, because that's what we do on this podcast, uninformed opinions. But we're going to do like a sandwich tonight, a positive, like a triple cheeseburger of negative, and then a positive at the end. So I want to start here. I know some of you don't like the NBA. I understand. The regular season is too long, and there's a lot of self-centeredness that's not my favorite with that league. But please watch Ja Morant. Just please take a minute and watch the Memphis Grizzlies and Ja Morant, who is awesome. He's the best. He had 52 last night and made 2 plays within a couple minutes that were outrageous. He is terrifying because he could get hurt at any time. He's built like me. He's the smallest guy on the court usually. But last night, he was 22 for 30 as a guard for 52 points after having 49 2 nights before. I don't think he's going to win the MVP because I think it's Joel Embiid's to lose, who has a somehow in shape and ready to go James Harden, who could have guessed that once he forced himself to where he wanted to go, he would magically be in shape again. So I'm sure Kyle and I will do some time on the James Harden, Ben Simmons stuff again once Simmons starts playing and Kyle is back and we get more consistent at finding times to do this. But for now, Ja Morant is just a joy and a delight, and that team plays really hard together, and they're fun. Unlike a lot of NBA teams, which can be a little soul-crushing watching especially in the regular season from night to night. But that Memphis team is going to make the West playoffs really interesting, and the East is guaranteed to be interesting because there's really no clear-cut favorite, and you have a bunch of teams still trying to get really important pieces back on their team. You have the Celtics, who are really hot, but it probably is not for real. But there's 6 or 7 teams that you could theoretically assume could make the finals from the East. So that'll be really fun. But for now, it's just Ja Morant. Just go watch him. Buy a couple games on League Pass, whatever you got to do. Give the NBA your money because certainly you shouldn't give the major leagues your money. And that's my favorite league. So I'm not, I wouldn't normally say this. So that's my quick positive at the top. The other thing, there's a guy on North Carolina State's college baseball team. I think his name is Tommy White. They call him Tommy Tanks. He's already got 9 home runs. The baseball season just started. The freshman. So you could follow along with that too if you want to have some fun. But those are the positives for tonight. And now, into the negatives. Here we go. This is the longest things we hate segment of all time because I've got some stuff to say about Major League Baseball. Now, let me be clear off the top. There are way worse things going on in the world. Even if the stuff in Ukraine wasn't going on, there are way worse things in the world going on by like a factor of 1 billion. We're going to get to the Ukraine stuff in a minute, actually, just for fun. We're going to do a little, not really political commentary, but venture somewhere I don't go very often, which is my thoughts on what's going on in the world. I always have them. I just don't know that they're always necessary for the public sphere, but for tonight, they're going to be. Now, anyhow, for baseball, I didn't really know where to start. I've read a lot of stuff. I follow a lot of people on Twitter on purpose, people who feel differently about many things, because that's one of my biggest things is that we're stuck in these misinformation silos because we only follow people that agree with us. And I don't think that's helpful. So I've been interested to follow kind of how it's all gone down. Obviously, fully upfront, 2 things. One of my ways I make money is tied to Major League Baseball, selling baseball cards. So clearly, from a personal perspective, it sucks to lose baseball games and fans and therefore money. But secondly, and most important, I love baseball. I like basketball and football. I even have grown to like soccer and so on, but I love baseball. It's how I made most of my very closest friends. It's something I bonded around with my now wife, then girlfriend. So I don't know. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. I know it's strange that I watch a lot of regular season baseball games, even though they can be long and slow. But I love it. I love all of it. It's just my favorite, and to me, it's the perfect microcosm for life. It is a lot of failure and less success. And to me, if you can learn to play baseball, and it is a game for the intelligent person. You can say that's super pretentious, but I don't care. It's the truth. And then soccer would be the opposite of that. It is the simpleton's game. Again, people are going to get grumpy about that, and it's well deserved. But I'm in a grumpy mood, so sorry. And so it is weirdly been an emotional day, and that is stupid because, as I have clearly said, there are way more important things going on in the world. And so I want to read a Twitter thread from Chelsea James, who writes for the Washington Post. She was a baseball writer. And this is what it says, and it's going to be long, so bear with me. It says this: one of the most disheartening things about our time, and probably all times, though it's easier to see now and highlighted lately, is how profoundly apathetic those with the power to change things or be stewards of treasured institutions or the health of our society seem to be to the people who treasure them. That was a long thing, but basically apathetic to the people who treasure them, especially relative to their own self-interest. It's played out on so many more devastatingly massive scales in recent years and days that it seems silly to even bring up baseball in this context. My point exactly, but she says, but in a world plagued by the indifference of the wealthy and powerful, at a time when so much feels so painfully out of most people's control and out of line with their hopes and dreams, I think it is extra painful for baseball fans to look up and see that dynamic playing out on a stage where the stakes are nowhere near as high, where it simply doesn't have to be this hard. This sport could bring so much joy at a time when so many of its fans need it most. The regular season may be impacted and doesn't have to be. Obviously, now we know what it is. Again, owners could end the lockout today. They haven't. It's unconscionable. Hoping for anyone with power to change things to do the right thing is a recipe for disappointment these days. We all know that well. Baseball can bring joy to so many, and it's about to be withheld by the few. This was written a day ago. Obviously, all of that has come to fruition. Hopefully, it's a short stoppage and not a long one. But this is where we're at. I've mentioned on this podcast before that for whatever reason, our culture has been programmed to favor ownership over labor, which I understand in certain aspects for sure, but this is not one. These owners are billionaires, many of whom scrimp on their team. People who are fans of the Guardians or the Pirates or the Rays or the Royals, or we could go on, Twins, which is Kyle's team, they're all just nodding their head. And yet they don't. And then they locked out the players when they didn't need to. And there still doesn't actually need to be a lockout. They could have started the season without getting this done yet. And they didn't. And the players did not ask to be locked out. The players did not threaten to strike. It's really unbelievable. So I want to read you another tweet. This is much, much shorter. This is, I don't know how to use Twitter, so that's my problem. This is from Jeff Passan, who we're going to get to in a minute. This is a direct quote from Rob Manfred tonight, who I would argue is the worst commissioner in the history of sports. There are some people who would like to have a word about that, I'm sure, like Gary Bettman, but no one cares about hockey except in Canada, so whatever. Says this: Rob Manfred said tonight, the concerns of our fans are at the very top of our consideration list. Jeff Passan adds, who's a baseball writer for ESPN. Rob Manfred, quote, on the day MLB canceled regular season games during a league-initiated lockout. Like, it's so clearly not the case that the owners and commissioner care about the fans. It's actually unbelievable. This is the same commissioner who called the World Series trophy a hunk of metal, a thing that kids like me when I was a kid and kids now dreamt and dream of holding one day as a Major League Baseball player. And the commissioner, the person who's supposed to look over the game, is calling it a hunk of metal. I was going to read another tweet, but it's going to begin to feel like I'm a far leftist, which I am not. really at all. My wife would be happy to tell you this. I tend to actually lean conservative in a lot of things, grew up very conservative. But in this instance, this is 30 billionaire owners who have run amok with power, who are not allowing people like you and me to watch a game we love because they're trying to give the players a worse deal than they had the previous 5 years, which is unbelievable considering where league revenues have gone. Which I'm going to go ahead and read to you from a story you should all read if you care about this stuff. This is from Monday from ESPN by Jeff Passan, who, by the way, tends to be more pro-owner than player in a lot of things, but wrote this on the 28th, which is yesterday. And I'm going to just read a couple things because it's very long, but you should go read it. It's not one of those stupid ESPN articles you got to pay for. This one was free. On December 2nd, the league instituted the lockout. This is what Rob Manfred said. "We hope that the lockout will jumpstart the negotiations," Manfred said. This is not a quote now, this is Passan writing. "The league then waited 43 days to present the union its next offer. My argument this whole time when people have posted about this on Facebook about being mad at both sides is that the league has never at one point argued or brought an offer in good faith. They have offered offers that are worse than what the previous ones were. The players have continued to lower and lower and lower what they're fighting for to try to be reasonable, and the owners won't do it, and have now canceled 6 games, which is ridiculous because they could absolutely right now decide to end the lockout and say, we'll keep negotiating. Baseball is not in a place to be canceling games. It's already losing ground to basketball and football every year, and ridiculously soccer sometimes. It is just really, I don't know, it's like the people running the sport don't understand that, like, it's like the meme of the dog sitting in the burning house saying it's fine. It's not fine. Baseball has this group of young stars that they should be marketing to everyone. Acuna, Soto, Tatis, Vlad Jr. I'm going to miss a bunch of people, but Wander Franco, the list goes on, of people, Aaron Judge, who are like, should draw people to baseball and have when they've been given the chance. And it's like the people running the sport just can't see it, which is remarkable. Anyhow, again, I'd love to read you this whole article, but the 10 people who are watching this would quickly leave. So the argument that Manfred has made over and over on the owner's behalf is how unprofitable it is to run these baseball franchises. And we all know COVID was hard on people. There was no one in stands, and there was limited people in the stands last year. Like, we get all this stuff, but baseball gets most of its revenue from TV deals, which continue to go up, which is amazing because attendance continues to go down. People still love baseball. Imagine that. So in 2021, that would be last year, for those of you who are unaware, Forbes estimated that 30 Major League Baseball teams are worth a combined $55.28 billion. There's 30 teams. That's almost $2 billion a team. Obviously, something like the Yankees is worth a lot more than the Pirates, who won't spend a dime. 10 years ago, that would be 2011, their combined valuations were $15.68 billion. That is almost a 4 times increase. It is a 360% or so increase in 10 years for sitting on a baseball team and running low payrolls, which most of these stupid teams do, and then complaining about not making money. Like, it would be like buying a house for $200,000, it appreciating to $700,000, and complaining because you had to replace the floor for a few $1,000s. It's ridiculous. There's not good faith arguments. None of them are. And it's pretty insane, honestly. All right, we'll continue on. I have lots to say. As I mentioned, Manfred called the World Series trophy a hunk of metal, which is kind of unbelievable. And then one longtime baseball executive said it was the aha moment for everyone. And then he did it again recently with everything about how owning a team isn't that profitable. Treating players like they're stupid has never worked. It's never been a great approach. And for a long time, especially I think pre-internet, players had a hard time figuring all this stuff out and getting together. I mean, you had There's been various watershed moments, obviously, but now there's so much information available. Everybody even knows how often Rob Manfred's playing golf this week, and it's been shared with the players. Passan goes on to say, if you went and got the next 1,200 best players in the world, the product would suffer greatly. This is true, and unequivocally true. It might be still borderline entertaining because the next 1,200 best baseball players are still way better than you and me, but it's not. These guys that are really good, it's another plane. It's like an upper echelon human being. Said if you handed the MLB teams over to 30 competent business people, the sport would not suffer. Actually, it might improve, which I think is fair, to say the least. And what's happening with this, we've already lost the games to COVID. You have guys like Trout, Soto, Acuna, again, Tatis, who have a real chance at the end of their careers to be chasing big time records down, home runs, all that kind of thing, and trying to put up Hall of Fame numbers. They've already lost 100 games in the COVID shortened season. And there's a pretty real chance that they lose a bunch of games again this year. And that is disastrous to those guys trying to chase down those kind of career accolades. So you got a guy like Ohtani, who's probably going to be like a comet, who's going to burn up pretty quickly, and you lose a prime year of him, who you've already lost one to injury. It's pretty brutal. So we need the baseball season to happen. That's my opinion, and it's not really that controversial. So anyhow, read that article. It's really good. But again, I want to be clear. I'm very frustrated about the whole thing. I even broke my Facebook posting fast, besides just pictures of my family, to post about it the other day. But there are way bigger things going on in the world, and I want to be clear about that. And baseball is near and dear to my heart, but people are much more near and dear to my heart, which brings me to my second thing that I hate. And I might get a couple of angry messages about this one. So everybody, I'm sorry. I told you I'm in a grumpy mood, and when I'm in a grumpy mood, I say more than I should. So here we go. There are a lot of times where conflicts between countries and whatever could go either way, where you could make an argument that both parts were at fault and they could have found a better way to solve things. It's actually unfathomable to me that the way we solve conflict in the world is by just seeing how many of the other people we can kill, and therefore putting our own people at risk of being killed. You would think war would be an absolute last resort when you think about the horrors of it, not only for the people who we lose, but for the people who survive it and then can't function in society anymore. And then we don't do a good job, at least our country, taking care of them when they get back, which is another tragedy. So there has been a lot of rhetoric in the last few years from people who somehow have begun supporting Vladimir Putin or the way he leads as a very strong-willed, powerful, type A, stick your chest out type of person. And while I understand that a little bit, because sometimes we wish maybe we were more of that kind of person in our own lives, or we wish that, kind of like the Jewish people did with Jesus back in the day, that our leaders will just quash our enemies and crush them under their fist. This is not true leadership. What Vladimir Putin is, just as some other leaders around the world, is a bully. And to use a term I don't use lightly, he's an asshole. And he has committed crimes that are horrendous. And so if this is your kind of leader, I question your character and the way you see the world. I did a quick Google search. I was aware of most of these, but I wanted to make sure I got it right. Of some crimes or atrocities, we'll say atrocities, that Putin has committed in his time in power, which started in the year 2000. So one of the ways he came to power was by committing what most people would consider war crimes by targeting civilians with bombings and so on. It's a complicated thing. You can go read about it. It's not a secret. It's not great. So let's continue down the list. He did some of the same by targeting civilians in Georgia in 2008. For those of you who are wondering, no, that's not the United States Georgia. That's the Georgia in Europe. In 2014, Russian forces bombed a commercial airliner, a Malaysian airliner that was in Ukraine that carried 300 civilians on it. This is, again, not like a conspiracy theory. This is fact that it happened. During that conflict with Ukraine in 2014, in which he annexed part of Ukraine, there were significant reportings of murders of civilians, and then there were massive detention facilities that more than one news reporting outlet that I went and looked at stuff on called them Europe's last concentration camps, where they were treating people about as badly as you can imagine, and then often putting people to death in large numbers. He has been very vocal and very clear in his support for the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, who, if you want to look that guy up, it makes a lot of what I'm reading here look pretty weak, which is terrifying. Part of what Russia has done in various squabbles is bombed hospitals and civil places where people are trying to care for people who need help, which again is very clearly defined by the United Nations as war crimes. There have been many, many reports of him poisoning people who have been critical of his governing practices. And there is a long list online you can find in many places of people, his political opponents, that he has had murdered. I hesitate to read this last thing. By the way, I ran out of space on this paper, and then I stopped taking notes. There was plenty more to write down. This is a bad person. He's not Joseph Stalin. That's a whole nother level. If you were into history, that Stalin killed more of his people than Hitler was responsible for killing in World War II, which is really unbelievable. But there is no, like, this is not an opinion. This is a black and white case. This is an unnecessary war. It's a war being fought for a variety of reasons, many of which is just for a star on his crown. There's a great podcast I listen to. It's called the Plain English Podcast by Derek Thompson that you can find. That he's done 3 really good podcasts on what's happening in Russia and why and what it could cause. Ukraine. But this quote kind of says it all, and I'll leave it here, and I'm not going to comment because I don't want to turn this into a political podcast, although I understand by invoking this person, I probably am. But this is a person who sees the world similarly to Putin, and it's why, though the economy was good under his reign as our president, I could never support because of the way he comported himself and the way he views leadership. I am not a supporter of our current president either. I don't think he's done a good job, but I don't question some of his, well, you know what, I'm not even going to say that either. I'm not a fan. I'm hoping for 2 new candidates this year, or in 2024, excuse me, who actually think real thoughts, moderate, reasonable things. But anyhow, not important. This is President Trump quoting in 2015. Well, I think our country does, he was asked about Vladimir Putin, who he had many times spoken in support of his leadership qualities, which we've already discussed. He said, well, I think our country does plenty of killing too. I've always felt fine about Putin. He's a strong leader. He's a powerful leader. He is those 2 things. He's also a criminal. And what's happening in Ukraine is criminal. And the people of Ukraine shouldn't have to take up their guns in their houses to fight a massive country just because that country thinks they can. It's gross and it's awful. And it makes the baseball stuff feel really, really insignificant because it is. But anyhow, that's my take on those two things. Again, sorry for the soapbox. You got me on the right night. If you wanted to ask controversial questions, I would probably answer all of them because I'm in a grumpy mood and I want to watch baseball this summer. And my kids keep asking about it because I got them hooked on terrible Cleveland Indians baseball last year, and they want to watch too, and I can't show them anything because it's not on. So last thing, Lent starts tomorrow, and with Ash Wednesday, of course. And one of the things I am trying to do is put this down and pick up more of these. So my recommendations for the night are just 6 books I plan to read over the next 40 days. I've been taking time every night, actually starting on Sunday, to read instead of watching TV or be on my phone. And I'm already really happy that I've done it. So my recommendation would be to find some more time to read something that's interesting to you. For me, I work in children's ministry. I work at a church. I run a sports program at the church. And so a lot of it is to try to get better at my job and to grow my faith. So I actually read this book in the last 3 days. It's called It's Personal. It's a great book about connecting with kids and teenagers. Close to that, recently, I've just noticed a lot of kids really struggling. So I bought this book. It's called Seen, Helping Kids Deal with Depression and Anxiety. Haven't read it yet. This is a book about working with kids in small groups. And so I'm excited to read that as well. This is a book that our church is actually going through with a sermon series, and I would be lying to tell you if I've read it. I've read the introduction, and that's it, which puts me far behind what our church is doing, but I'm excited to actually dig into it. It comes highly recommended, even by friend and sister of the podcast, Annie Bachman. So looking forward to getting to this one. It's an oldie but a goodie. This was given to me by my new friend and coworker, Craig Bloker, called A Failure of Nerve. It's a leadership book, and I love leadership books that are good, and I've heard great things about this, so I'm going to read this. And then I'm teaching a parenting class at our church right now, which is borderline hilarious some days, but I spoke about technology a couple weeks ago, which is kind of what spurred all of this anyways, because I felt guilty about the fact that I was teaching something that I don't always follow very well. So Craig also bought me this book, which is really good. I've read part of it and excited to dig through the rest of it. It's called Tech Wise Family. And so that's it. If you listen to this whole thing, and would like to talk more about things we talked about, even if you disagree completely, I would love to. Send me a text, send me a message, write it in the comments on YouTube or on Facebook, and we'll chat. I love all of you that listen to this podcast. And as I mentioned in a Facebook post from a long time ago, my differing of opinion with you is not valuable enough to me to lose friendships. So if you disagree with stuff, reach out and let's talk about it. That to me is something we've lost in our society, is the ability to work through conflict in a way that's still loving and caring and allows people to still be friends at the end. So anyhow, hopefully we'll get baseball. Hopefully next time we do this podcast, they've come to an agreement. And hopefully Rob Manfred, I don't know, gets replaced as commissioner tomorrow, and we can get someone competent in there who knows what they're doing. So again, if I stepped on your toes in this podcast, sorry. I mean, I'm really not, but please feel free to reach out, and love you all. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll try to actually start filming these weekly, but no promises. Kyle never listens to me. He's always busy. Anyhow, see you later.